In a cozy neighborhood filled with perfectly manicured lawns and cheerful homes, there lived two neighbors, Karen and Tom. Karen prided herself on being the self-appointed watchdog of their community. Her classic white picket fence stood proudly in her yard, but it was not just a fence, it was a symbol of her commitment to upholding the neighborhood standards. She believed rules existed for a reason, and every detail counted in maintaining the beauty of their surroundings. Tom, on the other hand, was more relaxed about things. He recently painted his fence a warm cedar stain that gave his yard a rustic charm. While he enjoyed his home's individuality, he often overlooked the strict guidelines of the Homeowners Association, HOA. For him, a friendly smile and neighborly chats took precedence over regulations. One sunny afternoon, Karen's eye caught Tom's fence. Immediately, she frowned at what she perceived as an eyesore against the official colors approved by the HOA. Feeling it was her duty to defend their neighborhood's aesthetics, Karen marched over to have a conversation with Tom. "Tom," she said firmly, "your new fence doesn't match HOA rules. You need to repaint it." Little did they know that this confrontation would lead them on an unexpected journey into the tangled web of community guidelines and personal pride. As Karen approached Tom's house, she frowned at the sight of his fence. The rich cedar color seemed to leap out at her, contrasting sharply with the white and neutral tones that the HOA had long championed. To her, it was as if a splash of paint had ruined the canvas of their community. With every step, her determination grew. She felt it was her duty to uphold the standards she cherished. "Tom," she called out, her voice firm yet tinged with a hint of urgency. Tom, who was tending to his garden, looked up with a friendly smile. He had no idea that Karen was about to shake the cozy peace of their neighborhood. "Hi, Karen. What's up?" he replied, wiping dirt from his hands. "I need to talk to you about that fence," Karen said, pointing at the freshly stained wood. "It doesn't match the HOA guidelines. You'll have to repaint it." Tom raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Really? I thought it looked nice." "Nice or not, it goes against what we agreed on as a community," Karen asserted, crossing her arms. "We need to keep our standards high." As they stood there, the tension began to rise, setting the stage for a showdown that neither of them anticipated. Tom's expression shifted from surprise to confusion as he processed Karen's words. "I thought I followed the HOA guidelines when I picked this color," he replied, scratching his head. "I even checked with a few neighbors, and they said it looked great." Karen's frustration bubbled just beneath the surface. "Well, maybe they were mistaken," she shot back. "The rules are clear, and we have to uphold them." Feeling uneasy about the confrontation escalating, Tom suggested, "Why don't we just check the guidelines together? It might help clear up this misunderstanding." He gestured toward his front porch, where they could sit and look over the documents. Reluctantly, Karen agreed. As they settled down on the porch steps, Tom retrieved a binder from inside his house that contained all the HOA regulations. Flipping through the pages, he searched for anything related to fence colors. Karen leaned in closer, her brow furrowed as she scanned the text. "Here," she said after a moment of searching, pointing to a section that outlined approved colors. But as they read further, both were stunned to find an updated list that had been introduced recently. "Wait a minute," Tom remarked slowly, realization dawning on him. "This says my fence is fine, but your white picket fence isn't compliant anymore." The air between them grew heavy with unspoken tension as the tables began to turn. As Karen and Tom continued to sift through the pages of the HOA guidelines, the atmosphere felt thick with tension. Tom's eyes darted across the text, trying to make sense of what he was reading. "Okay, here's a list of approved colors," he said, pointing out various shades of brown and beige, highlighting the ones that were acceptable. "And right there, oh no." Karen leaned in closer, her heart racing as she noticed the new stipulations. The previously approved warm whites were absent from the latest edition. Instead, they only allowed for specific muted tones that did not include her beloved white picket fence. "Oh no," she echoed, a sinking feeling washing over her. This can't be right. I've had this fence for years. Tom furrowed his brow, unsure whether to feel relieved or sympathetic. But it looks like your fence doesn't match anymore, he carefully pointed out, trying to soften the blow. Karen crossed her arms tightly, frustration bubbling inside her. This is ridiculous. They can't just change the rules without telling us, she protested. Tom remained quiet, recognizing that their previous conversation had taken a dramatic turn. Now faced with the reality that Karen's fence was against the rules she so rigidly enforced, an uneasy silence hung between them as they both grappled with their roles in this situation. After their tense revelation about the HOA guidelines, Tom felt a mix of emotions. He had originally felt defensive about his fence but now found himself in a position of unexpected advantage. As he mulled over the situation, a sense of vindication washed over him. Karen, the enforcer of rules, had just been caught in her own web. Feeling empowered, Tom decided to address the issue with the HOA board. He believed it was essential to bring Karen's non-compliance to their attention for the sake of neighborhood integrity. The next evening, he prepared his notes and gathered the courage to speak at the upcoming HOA meeting. When Tom arrived at the meeting, a sense of determination filled him. He waited patiently as discussions about other community matters unfolded. Finally, it was his turn to present. Standing before the board members, he explained how Karen had confronted him about his fence while completely overlooking her own violation. Since the recent updates to our guidelines, he began, it seems that her white picket fence is no longer compliant. A murmur rippled through the room as fellow board members exchanged glances. Tom respectfully urged the board to consider enforcing the new rules fairly, regardless of personal relationships. It was time for everyone in the community to follow the same standards, including Karen. With his heart racing, he awaited their response, knowing that this could alter the dynamics of their neighborhood forever. After Tom's compelling presentation, the HOA board members exchanged glances and murmured among themselves. It was clear that they were taking the matter seriously. As the discussion continued, several members raised concerns about the importance of adhering to the rules for the sake of neighborhood harmony. Karen's reputation as a strict enforcer of those very rules hung in the balance. Finally, the board chair called for a vote regarding the enforcement of the updated guidelines on Karen's fence. Let's ensure we are maintaining our community standards fairly, she said gravely. Each member voted one by one, and as the last vote was tallied, a unanimous decision echoed around the room. The motion passes, announced the chair. Karen must repaint her fence to comply with the new color codes. The room buzzed with tension, particularly among those who had faced Karen's enforcement of rules in the past. Meanwhile, Karen sat frozen in disbelief. She had always been the one insisting on compliance, yet now she found herself on the receiving end of those same standards. As she fought to keep her composure, a storm of thoughts swirled in her mind. How could this be happening? This was not how she had envisioned her role within the community. For Tom, however, it felt like justice had finally been served, leaving the air thick with anticipation of what would happen next. The next day, Karen received a letter from the HOA, formally informing her of the board's unanimous decision regarding her fence. As she read the words, frustration boiled within her. How could they do this to her? She had dedicated so much time and energy to maintaining community standards, yet now she felt targeted. Karen couldn't shake the feeling that she should be exempt from these rules. After all, she had been the one ensuring that others followed them for years. I've always done what's best for this neighborhood, she muttered to herself, pacing around her living room. Why should I be penalized for wanting my home to look good? Her mind raced with countless justifications. Perhaps they would consider her long history in the community or the fact that her fence had been there long before the new guidelines were established. Surely, they could see how much she cared about their neighborhood. Determined to fight back, Karen began drafting an appeal to present at the next HOA meeting. She wanted to remind everyone of her contributions and the countless hours she had spent promoting compliance among neighbors. This felt personal, and she couldn't let it go without a fight. The thought of having to repaint her beloved fence was unbearable, but what truly stung was the idea that she might lose respect in her own community. With her emotions boiling over, Karen took a deep breath and began drafting her appeal. She wanted to convey not only her frustration but also the reasons she believed her case deserved reconsideration. Sitting at her dining table, she surrounded herself with notes and documents, determined to make her voice heard. In her appeal, she highlighted her long-standing commitment to maintaining community standards. "I have always supported the HOA's mission," she wrote, hoping that her dedication would resonate with the board members. She included reminders of the hours she had spent ensuring that her neighbors complied with regulations. As she crafted her arguments, Karen also expressed how much the fence meant to her, a symbol of stability and pride in her home. It was not just about the paint color, it represented years of hard work and care for her property. Feeling a mix of anxiety and determination, she rushed to finish before the deadline for submissions. She knew this appeal was a long shot but felt it was worth trying. After all, if anyone could persuade the board to reconsider their decision, it was her. The day of the meeting arrived, and as Karen gathered her papers and notes, doubt crept in. What if they dismissed her appeal outright? Despite the uncertainty, she resolved to stand firm in defense of what she believed was rightfully hers. It's time to show them that she wouldn't back down without a fight. The day of the appeal hearing arrived, and Karen felt a mix of nerves and determination as she stepped into the room filled with board members and neighbors. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that this was her chance to express her feelings about the situation. As she stood before the gathered audience, she began passionately explaining her commitment to the neighborhood, recounting her years of dedication to enforcing HOA rules. "I've always worked hard to ensure our community remains beautiful," she stated, her voice steady. "This fence is not just any fence, it represents my pride in my home. I believe I should be given a chance to comply rather than face punishment." As she spoke, Karen glanced around at the faces watching her, some sympathetic, others skeptical. She felt hopeful that her heartfelt plea would resonate with them. However, as she wrapped up her presentation and awaited their response, she sensed an underlying tension in the room. The board members listened politely but remained unmoved by her arguments. They quickly pointed out that rules were rules and must apply equally to everyone in the community. Despite her attempts to persuade them, it became clear that none of them were swayed by her emotional appeal. As the meeting concluded without any sign of support for her case, Karen's heart sank. It was a painful realization that even her passion couldn't change their decision. As the board members cast their final votes, Karen's heart raced with a flicker of hope that perhaps they would reconsider. However, when the chair announced the unanimous decision to deny her appeal, a wave of defeat washed over her. The realization hit hard: she was being held to the same standard she had enforced for others, and now it felt as though the very foundation of her community involvement was crumbling beneath her. Karen sat in stunned silence as murmurs filled the room, a mix of sympathy and indifference from her neighbors. She had dedicated herself to maintaining order and aesthetics in their neighborhood, yet here she was, facing the consequences of a decision she never anticipated. The thought of repainting her beloved fence felt like losing a part of herself, a symbol of all her hard work and commitment. As she gathered her papers and left the meeting, questions swirled in her mind. Was she still respected in this community? Could she maintain her role as a leader after such public failure? With each step toward home, doubt gnawed at her heart. Karen had always prided herself on being a pillar of support for her neighbors, but now she felt isolated and vulnerable, unsure of her place in a community that seemed to have turned against her. The weight of uncertainty hung heavy as she grappled with the reality of her situation. In reflecting on Karen's journey, it becomes clear that the enforcement of community rules is essential for preserving harmony among neighbors. While these guidelines are designed to maintain the beauty and order of the neighborhood, they can also create tension when personal pride comes into play. Karen's strict adherence to these standards initially portrayed her as a devoted community member. However, her experience shows how even the most well-intentioned actions can lead to conflict. Her confrontation with Tom and subsequent struggle to accept the board's ruling reveal the delicate balance between individual expression and communal expectations. The emotional weight of losing her beloved fence symbolizes a deeper loss, her sense of belonging and respect within a community she had once thought she upheld. Ultimately, this story serves as a reminder that while rules provide structure, they should be applied in a manner that considers both fairness and compassion. Neighbors must navigate their relationships with understanding, recognizing that everyone has their own sense of pride tied up in their homes. If communities can learn to communicate openly and find common ground, they can foster an environment where both rules and personal identities coexist peacefully. The hope remains that through this experience, Karen will find a way to rebuild her role in the community, one that honors both her individuality and the collective spirit of her neighbors.